The first question you want to ask yourself is, what is my priority right now? What is my priority right now? What is important right now? A lot of the clutter that we deal with, personally, professionally, across the board. And as the saying goes, how we do one thing is how we do everything. If we're dealing with that, it often reflects some confusion around what's important to us. In other words, if we're saying that spending time with our kids, again, I have 2 kids, spending time with our kids is really important to us, but then, making up the corporate ladder is really important to us, but then maximizing our health for our age is important to us. But then again, spending time with extended family is important to us. But you see, it starts to get murky. And as one of the books that I'm going to suggest later on the program talks about, the word priority actually comes from, I want to say it's Greek in root, and it means the one. It means the thing, not the 15 things, not the 20 things, not the things that are more than one finger. It means the one. In other words, when we say, oh, there's so many priorities, that's actually not true. There's only one priority. That's what makes a priority. It's prior, it's one, it's the thing, right? As the popular book said, a decade and a half ago, it's the one thing. It's the one thing that we're supposed to be focused on. So often when we end up having a lot of clutter, it's reflective of us not really being clear as far as what we're trying to do or what's most important to us. When it comes to our business specifically, as far as knowing what our priority is, I found it comes down to 3 different things. The first thing is, where is our revenue coming from? Like, what's they call it the economic or financial engine. How are you paying the bills, right? Or how is your company paying the bills, more specifically? So revenue is the first thing. The second thing is service. How do you actually want to show up? Me doing this program is part of me showing up. This is me serving y'all as a community. So it's revenue, it's service, and lastly, it's demand. What are people asking? So if you understand where your revenue comes from, what's paying the bills, if you understand how you want to serve, so how are you serving people, the service, and 3, if you understand the demand, what are people asking? You can balance things based on where that strongest priority is. Sometimes people are going to be demanding something that you don't want to serve in that way, but it makes sense for what they need at the moment because you're trying to get them to the next level. And there might not be as much revenue, but there's so much demand for it. Then you're like, yeah, I'm going to prioritize that. It could be revenue. This isn't exactly what I want to do, and people aren't asking for it as much, but the amount of money that's available there allows me to keep my business running. And in fact, it allows me to cushion myself for the future, and I can take bigger risks that are closer to what I want to do. And of course, there's service. I want to serve people in a certain way. The money might not be as high, and demand might not be there as much, but I believe this is serving them the best way. Using that equation of those 3, it's more than 2, but I only got 2 hands. But figuring out the balance between those 3 will allow you to figure out what your priority is. A lot of the stuff that I focus on right now at this moment is based on service, because there's a certain way that I'm serving y'all that makes the most sense. So I'm doing ghostwriting behind the scenes. I'm working on the show and making it more robust and more fun. I'm actually doing some other work, which I can't wait to share with y'all. But this all makes sense. And so the things that are organized or disorganized within my office should be based on that. If I'm doing a lot of ghostwriting, which I am right now, then there should be a ton of books all around the place. There should be research that I'm doing and things that I'm focusing on that are making me a better writer and communicator. That makes perfect sense because that's how I'm serving people. If there was a different type of revenue that was coming in, then everything will be organized around that particular type of revenue. And of course, if there was a certain demand that was coming from y'all as my customers or my consumers, then things will be oriented around that. I think we often get into trouble with clutter, whether it's mental clutter, personal clutter, whatever, because we don't know what to focus on. So what are you focused on? A lot of my focus has been behind the scenes. That's why I have less episodes of the show. If you notice that, I used to do like 3 or 4 episodes a week. Now I'm only doing 1 or 2 episodes because I'm doing so much stuff behind the scenes. And there's a way that I can serve you guys more by actually appearing less. That is reducing the clutter in my schedule. Go figure. All that stuff stems from me knowing what the priority is in my business at this very moment. So it's almost like taking a step back and saying, what exactly am I focused on? And is that the most important thing to do right now? In a very practical way, one way to declutter is Dropbox. Shout out to Drew. I actually met him ages ago back when we both lived in San Francisco. He's going to amazing heights back in the day. And so fantastic company. Here's the bottom line with Dropbox if you're not familiar with it. It will actually do a mirror, fancy tech term, but it will mirror what's on your hard drive. Once it mirrors what's on your hard drive, that means your files, your documents, your pictures. I got little kids, so I got lots of pictures. All that stuff, it will mirror it. When it mirrors it into the cloud, as they say, then it'll allow you to do a couple different things. Number one, you can have a backup to whatever you have on your computer. And that includes your phone as well. So I don't have my phone with me, but your phone, your iPad, whatever, tablet, whatever you got going on. So it allows you to have an automatic backup. The second thing is that it allows you to reinstate those files when you need them. So I'm pretty tough with my laptops. Shout out to Apple. I don't think it's any reflection of the quality of their laptops, but I go through Apple laptops like once, twice a year. Actually more like, I'd say every 18 months. Let's be liberal and kind with myself. But whenever you clean your hard drive, which you should do every 6 to 9 months, wipe it clean and then put all the files back on there because a lot of bugs and stuff, viruses and stuff get on there. Or you're like me, you end up getting a new device, you're going to have to get all your stuff back on there. Dropbox makes it super easy to do that. So speaking about cleanliness and organizing the clutter on there. The third advantage is that you can actually use that backup, and I would recommend other backups as well. I have the links below for other backups I use, including one from Western Digital that I use regularly. It'll allow you to use those backups so that you don't have to have everything on your computer. And so if you have really big files, again, I have the Bring Your Worth TV show. This is episode 377. I have every single episode on my hard drives. So that adds up really quickly. You're talking about gigabytes, hundreds of gigabytes. I don't think we're to the terabyte yet, but we're getting there, almost to the terabyte. If you're doing all this media, or if you have a lot of content, or you're working with clients that have PowerPoints and all this other stuff, or music, a lot of y'all are musicians, including some of y'all that I coach, you don't have to store all that just on your hard drive. Therefore, you can focus on whatever you're talking about. Shout out to Karen, who gave a shout out on my LinkedIn when I was sharing this episode, talked about how it's easier to work with an uncluttered desktop. There's a physical desktop, but she was talking about the digital. I'm not going to show you my desktop right now because that's one of the reasons why I'm doing the decluttering episode, because I also want to do research on myself to get better at it. And what I recommend is going through decluttering every 3 to 6 months. It's my time for sure, but I'm working with so many different clients. I'm doing so many things behind the scenes. It's easy to get behind on that clutter. My whole point is that with Dropbox, you're able to have the backup, number one. Number two, you're able to retrieve those files when you get a new device, or let's say that I had a computer die a couple years ago. I was able to buy a new computer and I was up and running by the next day, literally. I had assignments I think I was working on a book. And in fact, I was working on a book. And all of it came back the next day because of Dropbox and other services. So number two, you're able to recuperate really, really quickly, recover. Number three, you don't have to keep all the stuff on your hard drive. And so as you lose hard drive space, or as you get more expansive in what you're doing, then you can go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to keep this in the cloud. I don't need this manuscript that I did in 2007. I can put that in the cloud for right now. Or I can put it on this backup. It gives you that flexibility. Therefore, it allows you to clutter a lot less. If you're not sure how to prioritize things, really, really simple trick to it. It's actually, I want to say, from Stephen Covey. I talk about it in the video. It's actually one of the first Bring Your Worth episodes. Episode 71. This was 300 episodes ago. Oh my gosh. So it was one of the first. This is episode 377 right here. This is episode 71. It's like double digits. I want to say this was about 2 years ago. I remember the episode. 7-minute episode, fully recorded, so it's edited and everything. It's not live like this, but it breaks down the simple system using rocks, hence the little rock emoji over there, using rocks to go ahead and break down what your priorities are. Really simple exercise. It'll give you ideally clarity, and then you'll probably have a little bit less clutter when it comes to that. One other recommendation is Cal Newport. Shout out to Cal. Hope you're doing wonderful. He's had 2 books, I believe, that have come out since then. Maybe just 1 book. New one on productivity. I'm still reading it. You will get a review very soon on that, but I'm sure it's great, like all of Cal's work. I interviewed him. It's actually at bringyourworth.tv. You just go look up Cal Newport, or you can see it in the links. When he came out with this book, right when the pandemic was starting, called A World Without Email. It talks about the history of digital clutter, how we shifted to this, even that argument that I gave at the beginning of the talk, or beginning of our show, as far as us expecting the digital world to relieve us from the physical clutter. But in reality, it just gave us 2 worlds of clutter. Man, that thesis can be applied to so many different things, including productivity, which again, Cal addresses in his new book. I had a chance to interview him again at the beginning of the pandemic. It was a great conversation. He also has little kids, so we talked about that, handling things and so forth. Again, the links are available at bringyourworth.tv. So today we're talking about how to reduce your clutter and declutter your small business. Again, as small business owners, which I am one, which I own a couple businesses, we're wearing all the hats. It's a lot easier to get behind on that. I'm entrepreneur coach Damon Brown, coach to side hustlers, solopreneurs, otherwise non-traditional entrepreneurs. You can watch the show every Wednesday at 1:11 p.m. Standard Time, Vegas time. You subscribe for free. Hop in the comments if you have any questions or thoughts about how are you decluttering, and how do priorities play into your struggle to keep things organized in your office.